What's up, fam? After all the talk of the coronavirus being a hoax, breaking news has just announced that President 45 and his wife now have that package. Check out the merchandise available for purchase. To purchase merchandise, click on the links available in the video description. Thanks. These tees can be purchased on black, white, or gray backgrounds. Please smash the bell icon to be notified of new content. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thanks for watching.
Stress enough, and to your point of how long I've covered him, I have heard from so many people tonight, prior to him testing, everyone thinking he has to have it in his inner bubble. And now the fact that I can't even get folks on the phone, the amount of sheer panic that is going on within the West Wing, within the president's campaign, cannot be understated. And you have to remember, too, think about the last couple of days of Donald Trump's life. I mean, you know, he is often attacking Joe Biden for not being out, not campaigning. Well, Donald Trump, within the last 5 days, which, as we know, you know, is when this thing can be contagious, you know, and then eventually you come out and have symptoms. Think about what he's done. He was on the trail yesterday, as Jordan just talked about, in Minnesota. Prior to that, he's at the debate. He is doing debate training with members of his key core staff, his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, there, Chris Christie, the former governor of New Jersey, there. He had a huge event at the White House on Saturday afternoon in the Rose Garden, to your point, another big event at the White House, for his new Supreme Court nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, surrounded by his top advisors, his top folks, the folks that are out on the campaign trail, sometimes with him, sometimes without him. Remember, the president's campaign is actually campaigning. They are doing bus tours. They are doing stops at local community centers, diners. They are trying to actually move on past this pandemic that they choose to ignore. That is going to be a massive problem right now to try to figure out how they move forward. And I got to tell you something, guys. Think about this for a second. You know, hope was around the president. The president has gotten this. Questions now need to be asked about who else is probably positive at this point. You know, Jordan spoke about a little earlier the fact that Hope was on Air Force One yesterday in quarantine. There were multiple people in the president's inner circle. Forget national security. Forget, you know, his press secretary. I mean, the list just goes on and on of individuals that travel with this president. And the other thing I would note, too, that, you know, think about how most offices and businesses and any place of work, frankly, right now, we are all operating differently. I'm speaking to you right now from one of the rooms in our house. We're not running the cameras in the bureau or anything like that. Granted, it's late at night, but it's also that we're not operating in normal functions. The White House is. They are operating, they are gathering, they are meeting in person. Things have not changed at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, despite the fact they have changed everywhere else across the country.
Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that. Coronavirus. It's all turning. They lost. It's all turning. Think of it. Think of it. And this is their new hoax.
But how do you see this? How do you see his base reacting to this? And will they ask, how is he able to keep the country safe if he wasn't even able to keep himself safe from this virus?
Look, that's going to be a question. I mean, you know, look, we look at the pictures that came out from the rallies. I mean, I have the image of that rally he did in North Carolina burned in my brain simply for the fact that you had supporters on top of each other as he spoke to a large crowd outside an airport hangar, most of them not wearing a mask. I think that's going to raise a lot of questions now. You know, if he can get it, who cannot get it. I mean, I think that's the way people do look at this president in some ways. Well, he's doing fine. He's healthy. He's out and about. He's traveling. You know,
For those of you who decided to listen to the stable genius, you might want to rethink that and regroup.
If it impacts votes, I think that's going to be something we're really going to have to look at, as we know from all of our polling and as our colleagues have been able to travel the country and speak to his supporters. A Trump supporter is more often than not usually a diehard supporter. And we know most people going into this election have pretty much made up their minds. But this is certainly going to be something that is going to give people pause. I know Rebecca Jarvis is already reporting that stock futures have been affected on this. We know the president raves and cheers on the stock market at every chance he gets. The morning hours are going to be quite interesting to what the world looks like when we all wake up. I don't think we're going to bed tonight, but we'll see what happens.
We are definitely not going to bed tonight because, again, this is this breaking news that is out. John Santucci, thank you so much. Again, President Trump has tested positive for COVID-19. Outstanding.
Now remember, fam, this guy is such a liar and a con man. He may be trying to get Joe Biden to suspend his campaign in an attempt to maintain power. In other words, if Biden believes that he has been exposed to the virus, it could cause him to suspend his campaign and focus on getting well or getting cured. Trump would do anything to maintain power. Lie, cheat, he doesn't care.
And he has kind of flouted this whole thing about not wearing masks, going to these rallies. Are we surprised by this diagnosis here?
I mean, it's shocking given where we are this close to an election. In one hand, it's not shocking after the news of Hope Hicks testing positive, because she is among his closest aides. They were right next to each other on that small space Marine One, the presidential helicopter. She is in the Oval Office all the time, in direct contact with him. So just in terms of the logic of the way COVID spreads, it's not surprising that he...
Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that. Coronavirus. It's all turning. They lost. It's all turning. Think of it. Think of it. And this is their new hoax.
How close was he? I mean, we saw on that debate stage how close they were. There are real questions about his health and safety as well right now. And I keep going back to the president's age. He is 74 years old. Joe Biden is 77. Melania Trump is 50 years old. That is the age range for people typically to get COVID and get sick. We are talking about a prime group of people who are in a very vulnerable position right now in terms of their age. I keep thinking back to some of the things that the president has said. It's like the flu. Majority of people survive. That he's very healthy. You can talk about some of the treatments that he's proposed without the scientific evidence to back it up, and everything all my colleagues have been saying about being on the White House grounds and seeing very few people, if any, wear masks, and hearing the president just as recently as that debate mock Joe Biden for wearing masks with frequency. To say that this just upends everything right now, 30 some odd days out from the election, is just a complete understatement. I don't think any of us have any idea what we are in store for right now. This is something we've not seen in American history.
And Cecilia, you mentioned it. The president said that the virus will just disappear. He said the end of the pandemic is in sight. During that debate, he essentially made it seem that the virus is under control. But going forward, I mean, there is a upcoming vice presidential debate as well. You mentioned Joe Biden, but Mike Pence as well. We don't know exactly how close of a contact they've had recently. Do you see this changing? There was already questions about if the next two debates would happen between him and Joe Biden, but do you see this even affecting the vice presidential debate set for next week?
Well, I mean, it could. It depends, I think, on how sick or whether or not the president becomes symptomatic and is sick. And I think there will be questions about his health and whether he's able to govern. I mean, if, and I'm saying if here, hypothetically, he becomes very, very sick, Mike Pence is going to have to step in. And whether he can do a debate at that moment, perhaps he can. I just think we don't know. Again, this is completely uncharted waters. I would be shocked if the president is if we see an in-person debate of some sort between President Trump and Joe Biden, I mean, there's supposed to be another debate in 2 weeks. If you look at the calendar, the president should be under quarantine in that time. So there certainly won't be I can't imagine there would be another debate in 2 weeks for the president, let alone even after that. It just depends on how he feels and gets through that. Again, his age is a huge factor in this. And the questions for Mike Pence right now, I mean, certainly he will have also had to be tested if he hasn't already been tested at this point. So hehuge questions for him about whether there's a debate going forward for him.
Trump did so poorly in the debate. He's probably experiencing some type of anxiety before the next debate. And this is a way to get out of facing Joe Biden.
So you heard Cecilia there mention the president's age, 74 years old. We know this is a very contagious virus. We also know that Hope Hicks, who was in close proximity to the president, was already showing symptoms. What does this tell you right now, doctor?
Well, good morning. I mean, we know that this is a very contagious virus and that is spread through close contact, people who are generally within 6 feet, obviously unmasked is a risk factor. And it's not surprising when you look at transmissions. The biggest transmissions are people within households and obviously crowds that have been together indoors for longer periods of time. So I think that this is something that is not necessarily surprising to say. And
a few months back, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson went through his own struggles with coronavirus. He was at one point in the ICU. He struggled for 2 weeks, I believe, with the coronavirus, and he's much younger than President Trump. And so what are some of the issues that the president is facing now with the positive diagnosis?
Right. So, this is an unpredictable virus. So it's, but certainly we get more concerned with people who are older, and being in your 70s is definitely a risk factor for having more severe disease. With that said, most people, even when you're elderly, still, do well with this. But, it's important to have close monitoring, obviously making sure that you're isolated, staying, more than 6 feet away from other people, anyone who's, coming near you. Again, both people have to be masked because this is a period of time where both of them could be potentially contagious as well. So part of it is also limiting the spread to others even during this time period. So we say you need to be isolated, but it is important that, that's very, strict as far as, staying away from other people. And then as far as the symptoms that's concerning, the most important thing is your respiratory symptom, making sure that your oxygenation is okay. And remember, there's something that this virus can do that's called silent hypoxemia. That's a fancy word for saying patients' oxygen levels can be low even when patients are feeling okay. So monitoring that is very important. The other part of this virus that we've learned about is that it's multi-system. So it can hit things beyond the lungs, the blood vessels, the heart. So there's, obviously for anyone who's infected, especially if you have symptoms, you want to make sure that you're, measuring these different types of the heart, the lungs, and the kidneys, the liver. So, very close monitoring is critical.
And Dr. Alleran, please stay with us for just a second. Before we bring in Dr. Jennifer Ashton, I want to reread this this letter from the president's doctor that the White House sent out. He said, "This evening I received confirmation that both President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for COVID-19.